Okay, we can go ahead and get started again. I apologize for the delay. There was user error on my part with my computer, but I think I've solved the problem. So anyway, I apologize for being a few minutes late. Just one thing I wanted to clarify before we continue with Mr. Petrozelli's questioning. There are times when I interject and ask questions. There are also times during the proceeding where I ask questions as sort of my turn in the questioning. And certainly any attorney or any party has a right to object to my questions. I certainly try to prepare questions that I don't think are objectionable, but I don't want to deny anyone the right to object to any of my questions that he or she believes that they want to object to. But I do ask that you let me finish my question and then state your objection rather than interrupting. I mean, number one, it just helps the proceeding go more smoothly. And number two, probably even more important, it really helps the court reporter prepare a more comprehensible transcript, because the court reporter just cannot take down two people talking at the same time. So please, I will try to respect you when you're talking and not interrupt, and please try to respect me and not interrupt when I am talking. So with that, Mr. Petrozelli, please continue with your questions of Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you. Is Mr. Lawrence back up?
Right here.
Okay.
On my screen, he's right next to you. So
okay,
anyway,
now he is. Now he is.
All right, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay.
We're doing pretty well considering we do this all remotely. And frankly, in some ways, by displaying the exhibits, we may have a better recording than we would if we were all in person. But please go ahead.
Yeah, the way I have my screen set up, I can't always see all of the tiles in the gallery. So,
well, we all need a little slack in working with Zoom, so
yeah,
that's just fine. Please go ahead.
So if we can go back to Mr. Lawrence's testimony at paragraph 24.
Okay, this is BTB 10. We'll put it back up on the screen and go to page 6, paragraph 24. Go ahead.
Mr. Lawrence, I wanted to ask you about paragraph 24 and the annual reports you file pursuant to the Recordation Act. The amounts of water that you report as extracted, are those amounts the amounts that are transported for bottling?
The amount of water we report is the amount of water that flows down the pipeline through the meter on the pipeline.
Can you specify which meter?
Yes, the meter is at the bottom of the pipeline at the silo location.
Is that the silo where that you described water is temporarily stored until trucks come and fill it up, or until trucks come to fill up?
Yes, that's the location. And this year will be the first year that we report off of the meters at each individual spring source.
Okay, and I wanted to, and I'd like to ask you about that after I ask you about these recordation reports. Okay. And the meter you referenced that is near the silo, that is below the overflow point, is that correct?
It is below the overflow point in Strawberry Canyon, correct?
Okay, and is that it? And to clarify, is it below the overflow point that has been used since 2020?
The overflow point that was used in 2020 was at the silos.
Okay, so that overflow point, the overflow point that you just indicated was at the silos.
Mhm.
Would the flow meter be above that?
No, the flow would have recorded through the meter.
So your extract, so the
So,
extract,
excuse me, Mr. Petrozelli, I need to take a 3-minute break for personal reasons. So
Okay.
I apologize, but we'll come back in 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I apologize for that. And I did say 3 minutes. So let's give it just 1 minute for, looks like everybody's back. So anyway, I apologize, Mr. Petrus. I just had a personal matter, but please go ahead.
I need to object. I apologize. And it's about the terms, just lack of foundation on the terms that we're using. In particular, discharge, meter location, overflow. We're just using some of these terms very loosely, and I'm struggling. I apologize for not stepping in sooner, but struggling to ensure that we're all talking about the same thing at each step of the way.
Okay, I thought it was relatively clear, but Mr. Petrozelli, it's certainly a reasonable objection. We want to make sure we are absolutely clear. We're all talking about the same thing. So please keep that in mind as you state your following questions. And Ms. Grady, as you think there's some confusion, please speak up. I mean, there's no trickery here. We all want to get the accurate information on the record. And I know that's what Mr. Petrozelli is trying to do, and Mr. Lawrence is trying to do. So please go ahead, but as necessary, you may object.
I will, and I apologize to be totally candid as well. I've been having a little problem with having any control over Zoom. So I've not always been able to get my cursor onto the screen at all. So having a little bit of a technical issue, and I apologize for that.
Okay, well, is it working now? Okay.
It is at the moment. It's gone
Okay.
away twice today, so I don't know, but thank you.
I think all our neighborhoods are burdened with a lot of internet capability. So anyway, Mr. Petrozelli, we are horribly interrupting your line of questioning, mainly my fault, but please go ahead with your questioning. And if you want to back up a question or two to get some context, that's fine too.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lilly. So if it helps, when I use the term overflow, I am using that term in the same sense that it is used in your testimony, Mr. Lawrence.
Okay.
Okay. And when I when I speak of discharged overflow, I mean the amount of water that comes out of your overflow point, water flowing out of that overflow point. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Okay, hopefully that helps. And I guess what I was trying to understand in my prior question is whether the water amounts reported in your annual reports under the Recordation Act include water that is discharged as overflow.
It includes all water that flows through the pipeline and is metered through the bottom of the pipeline, which would include that overflow.
Okay, thank you. Does it include, do the quantities of water that you report as extracted in your annual Recordation Act reports include water that is delivered to the owners of the historic Arrowhead Springs Hotel?
I believe it does, but I'm not positive about that.
Again, I'm trying to get an idea of how the accounting works.
Right.
So if I have this correct, what is reported in the annual reports for the Recordation Act, it includes that 20% of water that you indicated is delivered to what is now the tribe. And it includes overflow water. Is that correct?
It includes overflow water.
Mm-hmm.
As I stated, it may include the 20%. I believe it does, but
Okay.
I'm not positive about that. And then our current metering system will include all of those items.
Okay. When you say your current metering system, that would be the system that's been in place since 2020?
We added it in 2020, but it'll be recorded in 2020 as 2021 is when it went into service.
Okay. But given how you've described the accounting in the water that you report in your annual reports under the Recordation Act, that is not the amount of water that is transported for bottling. Would that be correct?
It includes that water, but that's correct.
Okay. And presumably the amount of water that would be transported for bottling would be no more than that reported
That's correct.
amount, and
That's
would likely be and likely less.
That's correct.
Okay. Of the water that is diverted from the Arrowhead Springs, let's say from 2018 through 2020, roughly how much was transported for bottling?
Mr. Petroselli, you picked some interesting years there. We've been studying the site since 2018. We've been doing various different shut-in and turnout tests under our special use permit. So that percentage is very difficult to calculate. So I wouldn't want to give you an estimate to that number.
Could you estimate whether it's more than a third?
I would not like to give you an estimate to that number.
Okay. Can you say whether the amount transported for bottling is more than 10 million gallons?
I'm
Objection
not sure of
made.
that.
Yeah, I don't understand. Are we asking, is that a total for 3 years? I'm a little confused.
Yeah, the objection sustained, Mr. Petroselli. I think you have to say whether you mean per year or total over 3 years.
In any one of those years, what's the amount transported for bottling more than 10 million gallons?
I don't have an answer for you on that one.
Do you
This
know if the amount transported for bottling in any one of those years was more than 20 million gallons?
No, I don't know.
Do you know if it was more than 30 million? Excuse me.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Petroselli, if he doesn't know if it's more than 10, I don't think he's going to know if it's more than 20 or
Okay,
30.
correct.
By my math, those numbers are bigger, so it's going to
Yeah.
be.
I'm trying to get some idea of how much they actually transport for bottling.
Well, why don't you just ask him that? Does he have any idea of how much was transported for bottling in those 3 years?
Mr. Lawrence, do you have an answer to that question?
I don't have it in front of me, and I wouldn't want to give an imprecise number. So I would prefer to not give a precise or an imprecise number to that.
Can you provide an estimate to the best of your ability?
Objection, I think this one's asked and answered.
No, it's a little different. He either can provide an estimate or he can say he can't.
Yeah. I can't provide an estimate.
Okay. And those quantities transported for bottling are not included in your exhibits. Would that be correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Is BlueTriton Brands now listed as the owner on these groundwater recordations?
I have not received the new recordation filings yet, so
Okay.
I'm not positive.
So do you know if the owner is still listed as Nestle Waters do you know if the owner is listed as Nestle Waters North America?
Objection, vague and asked and answered.
It's to some extent, this is really probably easiest addressed by just looking at the statements themselves. But Mr. Petroselli, why don't you specify a particular year and then ask him if he knows about it for a year? And I will just say, I don't think what the reports or the notices for 2021 are due yet. So probably the last year for which there's been a deadline for filing them is 2020. But go ahead and ask the question that way if you want to.
So do you know who is listed as the owner on the groundwater recordations at this time?
And again, Mr. Petroselli, I'm going to object. I think you have to specify a year if you're going to ask, because it clearly has varied over the years.
Okay. And on the most recent report, so I think the most recent report would have been filed in 2021. Do you recall who was listed as the owner of those recordations in that year?
Yes, I believe it's listed as Arrowhead. I'm going to be a little imprecise, but Arrowhead Drinking Water Company or Arrowhead Water Company, something along those lines.
Okay. Do you recall roughly when the Arrowhead, would you describe as the Arrowhead Water Company, became or would have become owned by Nestle Waters North America?
I believe 1992 was when Nestle purchased the company.
Okay.
But it was not the Arrowhead company that they purchased.
Right. And then I wanted to ask you, Mr. Lawrence, about paragraph 26 in your testimony.
Okay, do you want us to put that up on the screen?
Yes, please.
All right, Mr. Waldridge, please put that on the screen.
So, Mr. Lawrence, I wanted to ask you about the sentence in line 20, beginning with, or excuse me, it's the sentence in line 24, beginning with the words "in 2020." Can you read that, please?
Okay. In 2020, we upgraded the individual collection point meters to magnetic resonance meters and have been reporting each individual source from a data acquisition system collected from each site.
Okay. So I wanted a little better understanding about what you mean by, each site. So by each site, do you mean each tunnel and each borehole?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I do. Each borehole has a magnetic resonance flow meter on it today. The two tunnels have a different type of electronic flow meter, which is an ultrasonic flow meter, and they measure the elevation of water crossing a weir.
So now, since 2020, BlueTriton has the capacity to measure the flow at each tunnel and at each borehole. Would that be correct?
The system was installed in 2020, and our 2021 data will be accumulated from this system, correct?
And is that recorded?
I'm not sure.
Objection vague. Record.
Why don't you, I'm going to sustain the objection. Mr. Petrozelli, just try to state the question a little more clearly.
Okay. Is the flow data monitored at each of the meters, at each meter at a tunnel or borehole recorded?
It is.
Okay. Does BlueTriton have the capacity to close each borehole?
Objection. What vague? What do you mean by close each borehole?
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection. I think Mr. Petrozelli, well, I'm not going to speculate. Talk about what you were trying.
I guess
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Let me just finish. Just ask him what it is you want to know if they can shut off or not.
Perfect. Mr. Lawrence, what I would like to know is, do you have precise enough control of the system that you could, for instance, shut off the flow at borehole 7A?
Each borehole has a valve, a mechanical valve on it. And so, yes, each individual borehole can be shut off.
When you say a mechanical valve, does that mean a person would have to physically go to the valve and close it?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so it can't be done remotely.
It cannot be done remotely.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that finishes my questions with Mr. Lawrence.
Okay. I'm just making a note here. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Petrozelli. I said before the break, we would next go to Mr. Lowe. I hope Mr. Lowe, are you here? I don't see you right now. Darn it, he was here. He may have an issue with connection. Okay, let me just check my notes. We can come back to Mr. Lowe if we need to. I wanted to let him go first because he was said he had some schedule issues. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and go in the order I made my notes. Miss Murray, are you ready to ask your questions?
Yes.
All right, Miss Murray, why don't you please proceed with your questions, and then if Mr. Lowe comes back, I will give him the opportunity to go second. But You said approximately 10 minutes. So I'm not going to hold you to that, but I won't interrupt him even if he comes back in the middle. So please proceed with your cross-examination questions.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Lawrence.
Good afternoon.
I believe you testified this morning that a portion of the spring water in the pipeline is delivered to the hotel owner, and we just correct.
That's correct.
And I believe you said approximately 20%. Is that correct?
Objection, we're restating testimony.
I'm just setting a foundation.
Wait. I'm going to overrule the objection. I think Ms. Murray is entitled to establish an introductory foundation for her line of questioning, which I think is what she's doing here. So even though it may be repetition, I'm going to allow her to do that. So,
Is that correct? Is it?
Mr. Lawrence, do you need her to restate the question, or can you answer it?
Yes, please restate the question if you don't mind.
Well, so if I believe I heard you say that it's approximately 20% that's delivered to the hotel owner, correct?
I believe that's correct.
How is that water delivered to the hotel owner?
So the water, it's transmitted down the pipeline and is discharged to the hotel's water system through a meter on the hotel property.
And so my next question, thank you, is that delivery to the hotel owner metered? So is it a BlueTriton meter?
It is.
Objection, compound, which I heard two questions.
I only heard one. Why don't you just, Ms. Murray, just ask the question again. Well, I'll sustain the objection just so we're clear. I think your question was who owns the meter or who operates the meter, but those are two different questions. So please proceed one question at a time.
Great. Okay. So who owns the meter?
So the meter was installed by BlueTriton. The meter is managed by the hotel owner.
So is that amount that is delivered to the hotel owner reported to the U.S. Forest Service or other public agency?
That amount is in our recordation filings to the State Water Resource Control Board through San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District today.
And is it separated out or is it lumped?
I don't think I understand that question.
Is there a specific line in your recordation that is reported to the water board that identifies the exact amount that goes to the hotel owner?
No, there is not.
Does BlueTriton know the exact amount that goes to the hotel owner each year?
Yes, through our metering.
Objection, vague. I didn't want to speak over, but to clarify what time frame we're speaking about.
Each annual, we're talking annual reports. So is it your testimony that BlueTriton knows the amount of water that is given or put in the pipeline to the hotel owner each year? Correct?
Okay. So, before you answer, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Grady, did you want to state an objection as to whether his answer is different for various years, or are you?
Thank you. I am objecting because I don't understand which years Ms. Murray is asking about.
Okay, Ms. Murray, the problem is here, not a problem, but the issue is that Mr. Lawrence has testified that they did some very significant changes in their metering in 2020. So there may be different answers depending on what years. So I think it'd be good if you split it up by years, just so we're all clear on this.
Okay, so for 2021, does BlueTriton know the amount of water that was delivered to the hotel owner?
Yes.
And for 2021, did BlueTriton report that amount separately in its recordation annual report?
We have not reported anything yet in the recordation reports. We haven't even received our filings yet.
Okay, for 2020.
For 2020, it is not. Can you please repeat the question?
For
Yeah,
20,
go ahead and state the entire question, just so we're clear.
for 2020, did BlueTriton report a separate amount that was delivered to the hotel owner?
To whom? I'm sorry, to,
In
as a
the
recordation?
Yeah, in the annual recordation. Thank you.
No, it is part of our recordation. It is not separated.
Okay. The meter that was installed by BlueTriton for the amount for the water that's delivered to the hotel, is that an instantaneous recording or is it manually collected or measured?
The meter is a typical propeller meter with a totalizer and is manually read.
Manually read. How often is it manually read?
I don't know.
Who would know?
The hotel owner reads the meter.
Okay. I'm going to move from the hotel owner. So I believe you testified that as of 2020, you can control the overflow water, then return that water to Strawberry Creek. And you said just below springs 10, 11, and 12. Is that correct?
Approximately, yes, below 10, 11, and 12. Not just below, but.
And as of today, is the return of the water into that Strawberry Creek location metered?
As of today, it is metered.
And is the return of water, the amount of water that is returned to Strawberry Creek just below springs 10, 11, 12, is that reported? Has that been reported to the U.S. Forest Service or any other public agency?
Not as of yet. The system has just been online for 2021.
Okay. For the meter that is in the return, that is in the just below the springs 10, 11, 12 that records the overflow, is that manually read or is that instantaneous?
I'm not sure I understand the term instantaneous. None of them are instantaneous, but it's electronically read.
So that one is electronically read.
That one is.
And is it making readings? Like sometimes it's every 15 minutes, sometimes it's every hour. How often does that meter make readings?
Sorry. My apologies. I didn't mean to cut in. I'm not positive of the exact time frame, but it's multiple times a day.
So is it correct to say the meter that measures the overflow just below springs 10, 11, 12 is electronically read, it collects data electronically and can be read electronically?
It collects the data electronically and is stored electronically.
Stored electronically. How do you retrieve the stored data? Electronically or manually?
Wait.
Okay, sorry.
Ms. Murray, just ask the question, how do they retrieve the stored data?
How do they retrieve the stored data?
Yeah, it's stored in a database and retrieved electronically.
I think, Mr. Lawrence, and I'm sorry if I'm going to jump in, Ms. Murray, but does somebody have to go out there, or is there some way you can read it remotely? That's what we'd like to know.
That's what I'm trying
I
to
would
get
like
at.
to know.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I'm trying to get at.
At that location, it is read remotely. Nobody has to go on site to read that meter.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Willen. So, and then I have a similar question. You mentioned when Mr. Petrozelli was asking you questions that there's a tunnel and borehole meter that is now recorded. Is that the same type of meter that's at the overflow that's just below springs 10, 11, 12?
And excuse me, Ms. Murray, but that does misstate his testimony. I'm going to try to help you out here. I know you're trying really hard to get the information, so I don't want to criticize you. And this information is very important. But Mr. Lawrence did testify there were different types of meters on the boreholes and on the tunnels. So I think it would be good if you split your questioning up to ask first about one set of meters and one about the other set of meters.
Okay. So for the tunnels, I believe the meters for the tunnels are now recorded. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And how is that information collected?
That information is collected in a database, electronically and remotely. I'll use that term.
Okay. As to the borehole tunnel borehole meters, is that information collected electronically?
Yes, it's collected electronically and remotely.
Okay. And to date, has that any amounts been reported to the U.S. Forest Service or any other public agency?
Objection, vague amounts from where? No, what?
I'll start with the tunnels. So for the tunnels, have those electronic amounts been reported to the U.S. Forest Service?
Let me think about that. I believe we have reported some of those amounts to the U.S. Forest Service through our special use permit AMP as part of our testing. There has not been any formal annual report or anything like that.
So does BlueTriton report to the U.S. Forest Service for 2020? Did you report the amounts of water that were taken from the tunnels?
Just through our recordation amounts.
Okay, just and one last question. You testified, I believe, that you don't know how much water was transferred for bottling in 2018. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Misstates, objection, misstates.
Right.
I think he said off the top of his head.
Well, no, I'm going to overrule the objection. I think that is an accurate statement. And I think he just answered that he does not know for 2018. So that objection is overruled. Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
So who would be the person in BlueTriton that would know how much water was transferred for bottling in 2018?
Okay, and Ms. Murray, I do have to say that that's really not a fair question because I think Mr. Lawrence said he didn't know as we sit here today. So he may in fact be the person, he just may need to check records. So I think you should rephrase your question in a way that's perhaps not quite so derogatory to Mr. Lawrence. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
And I know you didn't.
Are you the person at BlueTriton that would be able to know how much water was transferred for bottling in 2018?
Yes, that's me.
Okay, no further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Murray. And again, I'm sorry if I was interrupting. I know you were trying, but some of the things just came across a little confusing. So, but Mr. Lawrence, thank you. I think you were as clear as you could be with your answers, and I appreciate that. So I don't see Mr. Lowe yet. Mr. Lowe, are you there? Not seeing Mr. Lowe. I'm going to go down my list. Ms. Doty is next on my list for questioning. And Ms. Doty, you said 30 to 45 minutes. So are you ready to proceed with your cross-examination questions?
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Mr.
Yes.
Lowe is back.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm having some technical difficulties as well. But I'm ready to go if it's okay.
All right. So Mr. Lowe, yes, I said you could go. So please do. And just a reminder, please try to ask questions. Don't have introductory statements. Just try to have good, short, concise questions for Mr. Lawrence.
Okay, I will do my best. Mr. Lawrence, good to see you, my how long have we known each other?
I think Mr. Lowe, I think we met in 2015 or 16. I do recall seeing your name on Forest Service documents all the way back to when I started in 2003.
Okay. Are you a hydrologist?
I am not a hydrologist.
Are you a hydrogeologist?
I am not a hydrogeologist.
Are you a geologist?
I am not a geologist.
Are you a biologist?
I am not a biologist.
Okay, but you know your mechanical engineering really well and your plumbing really well, and you know about spring development pretty well, right?
All right, Mr. Lowe, objection is
I'm sorry.
sustained. There you go. Please just
I'm
ask
sorry.
questions.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Do you remember when you and I met in Ukaipa in 2014 to talk about the drought and could there be any work done to get water back in the creek?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Can you explain to me why now, I know at the time things were real contentious, but why did you not want to meet with Gary Ernie, the permittee liaison that you'd worked with for years?
Objection, relevant.
Okay. Okay.
I guess I'm going to sustain the objection. My understanding is Gary Ernie is with the Forest Service. And whether or not Mr. Lawrence met with him and why, I don't think is going to be relevant to our hearing. So Mr. Lowe, unless you can explain why you think it's, and Ms. Dory, you're going to get your chance to ask questions. So please, let's let Mr. Lowe explain now why he thinks that's relevant.
It's relevant and goes to full disclosure. We were trying to meet with.
Okay, all right, don't testify.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Lilly, when we, at the pre-hearing, you had said that I would be able to potentially assist Mr. Lowe and weigh in on objections or defend against arguments if they ran into trouble. And I'd just like to say that BTV put this at issue by talking about things that they have reported to the Forest Service.
Okay, I want to try to keep some control, some boundaries here on Mr. Lowe's question, but I will accept that comment from you, Ms. Doty, but please try to limit yourself if you can on helping out Mr. Lowe. I think I mainly was suggesting you could help him prepare for the hearing rather than during the hearing, but I may have said both. So let's just go ahead and ask. I'm going to help out Mr. Lowe and maybe we can go forward. First of all, Mr. Lawrence, who is Gary Ernie?
Gary Ernie was a Forest Service employee in 2003 when we rebuilt our pipeline. He is the individual who managed the special use permits for the Forest Service, including ours. And in 2003 is the signature of the project to rebuild the Arrowhead pipeline.
All right, so on Mr. Lowe, what time frame do you want to ask about Mr. Lawrence's meeting or not, or decisions not to meet with Mr. Ernie?
Well, I'm going to ask questions about the history of the Forest Service and BlueTriton and their predecessors all the way back from 78 to 2015. And Mr. Lawrence knows better than anybody here besides myself about that. And the Forest Service permit is very important to this whole issue.
All right.
I would like to object. Most of the discussion about the Forest Service and responses about that were in answer to cross-examination. And I'm still struggling to understand the relevance to the assessment of the draft CDO and the 2021 report of investigation, which are the focus of this hearing. And we've taken out certain other issues.
Yeah. All right. So Mr. Lowe, I'm having trouble with this too. What BlueTriton's relations with the Forest Service may be relevant if there's overlap between the Forest Service permitting issues and State Water Board's permitting issues, or from their activities. But from what you just said, you want to have a very broad line of questioning about BlueTriton's relations with the Forest Service, and I'm just not seeing that as being relevant to this hearing. I mean, this hearing's on the water right issues, not the Forest Service special use permit issues. So, do you have any short explanation for why you want to ask this line of questioning?
I think as I understand it, I can go into the things I'm thinking about in my rebuttal, perhaps.
That might be better if you want to offer your own rebuttal testimony. If you want to say something, it's a lot easier for you to say it rather than to try to extract statements out of Mr. Lawrence. So
Okay. Then look, I'll try to be shorter and stick to things that are for sure relevant to what we're doing right here.
Okay, thank you. So you may proceed.
Okay. So I already asked you, I think you and I did meet in 2014, correct?
I believe it was 2014. It might have been 2015.
And what did you remember being the reason that we met?
I don't recall.
You don't recall why I asked after all the years?
Wait.
With you? Okay, I'm sorry.
You're starting to get into statements.
sorry.
He said he
Okay.
doesn't recall. I think you have to move on.
Okay, all right. Do you remember 2014 and 15 was the worst drought in 200 to 300 years here?
Objection. Characterizing things outside of the scope.
I'm going to overrule that objection. I think he's entitled to ask a leading question. And if Mr. Lawrence either can say he agrees or he doesn't agree. So the objection is overruled. Mr. Lawrence, you may answer.
Yeah. Could you please ask the question one more time? I just want to make sure I heard it correctly.
We met in 2014 and I said that was also.
No, wait, Mr. Lowe.
Okay.
I'm going to just ask your question.
Good.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawrence, Mr. Lowe asked, do you agree that 2014, 2015 was the worst drought in 200 years in this area? I think you can say yes or no, you agree or you don't agree.
I do not agree.
All right, Mr. Lowe, you may continue with your questions, but please stick with questions, not statements.
Okay. Did you realize that the gauging station at the bottom of East Twin Creek had the lowest recorded record in 99 years during August, September of 2014, 15?
I don't have any recollection of that.
Okay. Do you remember me asking you if there was anything that Nestle could possibly do to put water back in the stream during that time period?
I recall a conversation with you about those subjects.
Okay. Let me keep looking here.
Please take your time.
Do you remember that I asked at that time to have a meeting with the public and the Forest Service and Gary Ernie and others to talk about doing everything possible to try to save Strawberry Creek from the lowest flows ever recorded there?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you recall telling me that you had absolute rights to Strawberry Creek and that the state recognized your rights?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you remember telling me that you would talk about everything possible, but not the permit?
And again, Mr. Lowe, you're going to have to be clear about what
Okay.
permit you're talking about.
I'm sorry. The Forest Service permit that was 28 years old?
I don't recall that conversation.
Okay. After that first meeting, why did BlueTriton Nestle shift to having Gene Zimmerman, the ex-forest supervisor, negotiate with me?
Objection. I don't understand what he's asking about negotiate with me.
Can I explain?
No,
No.
you may not. Wait. I rule on objections here.
Sorry, I apologize, Mr. Lilly
Um,
and
This-
Mr. Lowe.
Mr. Lowe, whether or not BlueTriton designated one person or another person, I don't know whether it's to negotiate or to talk with you about something. I don't know I don't see how that's relevant to this hearing.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go on.
Okay, please do.
Okay. During the 2014-2015 drought. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask a question. Why did Nestle not meet with the mountaintop community when they were invited during the 2014-15 drought at the Mountain Forum, specifically on the Forest Service permit and the Nestle withdrawal of the water? Why wouldn't Nestle come and talk to us?
Okay. Assuming, first of all, Mr. Lawrence, you can say whether or not Nestle just would meet or would not meet. And if they would not, you can say why.
I don't recall an invitation to a meeting.
Okay.
Okay. I know that you came in 2003, but were you aware that in early 2003, the Forest Service pulled together a high-powered team to talk about the Nestle permit?
Objection. We're testifying again.
No, that was a question. Are you aware? Mr. Lowe, I'll tell you, I'm going to allow you to keep going for a little while, but most of this stuff you're going to be much better off writing your own narrative about than trying to get Mr. Lawrence to recall things from over almost 20 years ago. But do you recall such, and this was before you even were working at Nestle, Mr. Lawrence, do you recall this discussion?
I do not recall it.
Okay, were you hired in 2003 partly because of the Forest Service desire to do more in-depth look at the permit?
I was hired in 2003 to replace my predecessor who was moving to another region.
And what was your predecessor's name?
My predecessor was Dave Palais.
That's right. That's right.
I'm sorry, but that would be good if you could spell that last name for me, Mr. Lawrence.
My pleasure. Palais.
All right, thank you. We may proceed, Mr. Lowe.
Thank you. I'm weeding out some that I don't want to ask now that we've had this discussion.
Okay, yeah, take a moment. I mean, I understand this is new ground for you. You haven't been doing this for a career, but try to keep it to questions.
Okay, here's one. Mr. Lawrence, the Forest Service permit that was issued to you required that you would follow all state, local laws, regulations, policies, including getting required permits from state fish and wildlife.
Objection. Testifying.
No,
Okay,
he's asking a question. It might be better if you just try to keep it short, Mr. Lowe. Ask him,
okay.
what did the permit require about compliance with other laws?
Well, no, that's not, I wanted specifically, so I should get specific. As I understand it, the Forest Service permit required that you get stream bed alteration permits. Is that correct?
I am unaware of any a permit required, as you stated.
Were you required to contact Fish and Game to see if you needed a stream bed alteration permit
Objection for what?
for their
Um,
springs? That these are all springs.
All right,
that-
don't argue. Don't,
I'm
wait,
sorry,
wait.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And again, I'm sorry, Mr. Lowe, but I don't understand why it's relevant whether a Forest Service permit required Nestle or BlueTriton to get a stream bed alteration agreement from California Department of Fish and Wildlife. None of that directly concerns the State Water Board in this proceeding. Is there some connection here I'm missing?
Well, the connections are that they're springs. We've been told over and over that they're springs, and springs and flow to streams, if they're altered, require stream bed alteration permits. And there's been none even applied for anyway. So I
Okay.
won't argue that. I'll bring that up in my.
Yeah, I think you better move on. I don't think that's an appropriate line of questioning for this
Okay.
witness for this hearing.
Okay.
And just for the record, and Mr. Lowe, I'm not trying to be rude. This is just part of my job. But I do need to object to the lengthy testimony he just provided.
Oh, it was not testimony. He's not under oath. Don't worry about that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Lowe.
Okay. Mr. Lawrence, how deep is tunnel 2 and tunnel 3?
Objection. Can we do one at a time?
Yes. How deep is tunnel 2?
I don't have an exact measurement that I can recall offhand. I think we did submit the drawings for those to the state board, though.
You've been in those tunnels, correct?
I have.
So are we talking 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet?
Okay, Mr. Lawrence, if you can give an approximate estimate, by deep, I assume he means how far into the mountain it goes. If you can give an approximate estimate for tunnel 2, go ahead. And if you can't, just say you can't, and you need to refer to the drawings.
I would prefer that we refer to the drawings.
All right. So, Mr. Lowe, I'm pretty sure he's going to give the same answer if you ask him about tunnel number 3, but you can ask him if you want.
Do we have the drawings available to us?
Yeah, Mr. Lawrence, you may answer whether or not BlueTriton has submitted the drawings to the State Water Board Division of Water Rights Enforcement Section.
I believe the drawings were submitted as part of the one of our reports in the past to the State Water Board.
All right. So, Mr. Lowe, you may move on. And incidentally, we've lost your picture of you.
Oh, is it
There
there?
you are. Go ahead.
Let me ask a question of you. I'm used to public meetings and involvement where if somebody asks for something like the depths of the wells, that's part of what's planned is to get that information by the next meeting or whatever. Is that
Well,
not how this process worked? Can we not ask for the depths of the wells?
I think, Mr. Lowe, that Mr. Lawrence has testified that they provided that information to the Division of Water Rights Enforcement Section, which is the entity that is bringing this action, and also Water Rights Enforcement Sections witnesses have testified as to how long the tunnels are and how long each borehole is. So that information is all in the record now. So
Okay.
I think it's there. I think you should probably move on with your questions.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the question, I'm sorry. Why, Mr. Lawrence, was it decided to put the overflow water below 10, 11, and 12 rather than release it at each of the spring sites where it would be more natural?
So the overflow system that was installed by request of the Forest Service was, we agreed with the Forest Service to put it in that location. it is not possible for us to overflow each individual source in an automated fashion. And so that was the location that was chosen.
Okay, it was because of the
No,
automation.
no,
Oh, I'm sorry,
don't do that. Ask questions.
I'm sorry. Is there still a tunnel 7, or is tunnel 7 been totally replaced with boreholes?
I'm not familiar with a tunnel 7. There is a 7 catchment.
Okay, what? Okay. So explain the tunnel catchment. What is the tunnel catchment?
So the
Or a
catchment,
what is a catchment?
so the catchment was an older collection system that has been unused for some time after borings, this borings 7A, 7B, and 7C were installed.
Okay, okay. Okay. All of your pre-1914 claims to water rights are based on water taken from the private land between Coldwater Creek, Waterman, and West Fork, correct?
Objection, misstates testimony.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think he can answer that question if he knows, and if he doesn't know, he can say so.
I don't know the answer to your question.
Okay, maybe I'll try to form it a little different. You know a lot about the pre-1914 claims, don't you, that you guys are telling us about? You're a person that knows that, right?
Objection.
Okay.
Let's wait, Mr. Lowe. We have heard Mr. Lawrence testify about what his understanding is of various historical documents related to BlueTriton's pre-1914 claims. So I think we have that foundation for your question. So if you have specific questions about BlueTriton's pre-14 claims, go ahead and ask those now.
Okay. BlueTriton's pre-1914 claims aren't up in Strawberry Creek, are they?
And again, it's a little. I'm trying to help you. I know this is really hard for somebody who doesn't have training in this area, but I think what you're getting at is where was the water diverted during the. I'm going to try again. Where was the water diverted that BlueTriton claims perfected its pre-14 water rights? Is that what you're trying to ask?
Yes.
All right, let's just ask that question, Mr. Lawrence. To the extent you know, where was the water historically diverted that forms the basis of BlueTriton's claims of pre-1914 appropriative water rights?
I don't know where that water was diverted.
All right, Mr. Lowe, you may proceed.
Are you aware of the pipeline that was first built in Strawberry Creek in 1929?
I'm not aware of the pipeline that was first built in 1929.
Or 1930?
Objection.
What's your basis for objection?
It's, I guess, assuming facts not in evidence and lacking foundation. I guess I'm just confused, quite frankly.
Okay, so Mr. Lawrence, are you aware of any pipeline being constructed in Strawberry Creek in 1930?
I am not.
Okay, Mr. Lowe, you may move on.
Do you know of any pipelines in Strawberry Creek prior to that?
I don't know of any information regarding the individual pipelines or their exact dates of construction.
Okay. I thought that was you guys' blue.
No, don't do
okay.
that.
I was just going to refer to something that we looked at today already. I thought it
Well,
was their exhibit.
I think you're going to have to make a question though.
Okay. Do you remember the exhibit we looked at earlier today? It was on a blue map and it showed the pipeline for Coldwater Canyon, showed a pipeline for Strawberry Canyon, and showed a pipeline for Waterman Canyon.
I believe to assist, he's referring to BTB Exhibit 2.
Okay, I do remember there was a blueprint, and let's see if we can pick that up. BTB2, let's put that one up on the screen. And Ms. Doty, if you can help us out with a page number, that would be good. I'm sure it's in my notes here somewhere, but if you can find it.
Mr. Lilly, my recollection is that it's on page 36 of the PDF.
Okay, let's try that and see. Thank you, Mr. Petrozelli. Good work. All right, we have this blueprint on the screen now, which we will make a little bigger. So good, thank you, Mr. Woolridge. So if Mr. Lowe, if you have a question that you want to ask Mr. Lawrence about this blueprint, please go ahead. But remember, keep it as a question, not a statement.
So, Mr. Lawrence, did you know about these 3 pipelines?
I do recognize this blueprint, and yes.
And were these constructed or planned to be constructed around 1929 or 30? Do you know?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Have you ever been to the Cienegas that it shows in the Strawberry Creek drainage that you mentioned earlier today, that it appeared that the pipeline?
All right, just
Okay.
ask. Has he ever been to the Cienega shown on this blueprint?
I have. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Mr. Lawrence. You may answer.
Okay. I have hiked the Strawberry Canyon from top to bottom. So yes, I have been through this area.
Do you remember those Cienegas?
I do not have any recollection of the Cienegas.
What's your understanding of what a Cienega means?
The Cienega is essentially a spring seep or wetted area.
Okay. Are you aware of any pipeline that went above this prior to BlueTriton putting in their spring developments?
I have no information on that.
Aware that that pipeline that's shown for Strawberry Creek actually went into another tributary of Strawberry Creek?
Objection.
Not even that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lowe, I didn't hear that question. What is your question, please?
Are you aware, Mr. Lawrence, that the pipeline in Strawberry Creek that's shown didn't actually go to the main stem? It went to a tributary that comes into Strawberry Creek in the lower area before it gets to Coldwater.
I'm objecting as it's testimony.
It's assuming
Being
fact. Excuse me, Ms. Grady. It's assuming facts, not in evidence, but I'm trying to help out so we can get through this.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
let me just ask, Mr. Lawrence, do you have any information regarding the historical pipelines in Strawberry Canyon that were constructed in the vicinity of this area shown on this blueprint?
I do not.
All right, so Mr. Lowe, I think you've exhausted this witness's knowledge of this topic. Why don't you go ahead and move on?
Okay. I'm done. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
All right, and thank you. I realize this is challenging. There are lawyers who've been doing this for many years who are still developing their skills, so I realize it's hard for you, but thank you for sticking to questions and going forward. So with that, Ms. Doty, well, it's just about 3 o'clock. So we're going to take a break of 10 minutes. We'll go till 3:10 on break, and then we'll start at 3:10. And Miss Doty has her hand up before we go on break. Go ahead, Miss Doty. What is your question?
I just wondered, one, what time we're finishing today?
And the answer is I have to be out of here by 4:15 at the latest. So I'd like to finish at 4 or just within a few minutes after 4. I'm hoping we can get through your questioning before that, and then we'll have to start up tomorrow morning with questions by Ms. Fry, Mr. Bilecki, and Ms. Nickel. So that's my plan.
Okay, and then I have a few impeachment exhibits that I need to send to FTP. So
Okay,
I'll
so
give you a heads up, we'll do it right now.
do that right now, and that'll be in the story of stuff folder, I take it?
That's correct.
And we will number those, whatever your last story of stuff number, we will number them sequentially after that, and we will post them. How many are you going to upload?
I believe it's 5, and I have gone ahead and bates them with the exhibit number at the top and the bottom. I do believe it starts at 265 and then it goes from there. But it would be good if they went in, the file name indicates the exhibit number, just so that they'll be easy to identify from here out.
So is it story of stuff 265 through 269?
That's correct.
Okay, so please upload those now. We will move them over to the folder right away.
Okay.
We'll start at 3:10, and of course, if BlueTriton has questions or says they need more time to review them, we will address that at 3:10. Mr. Donlin, do you have a question now?
Yes, I would just ask Ms. Doty if it's possible that she email those to the service list as well. If there's only 5 documents, it sometimes takes a while to get those documents uploaded. I think when we were requested to provide them yesterday, we had a sizable break so that we were able to get it uploaded and into the hands of the other parties. I don't know how lengthy those documents are, but if there's some way to email them to the parties simultaneously, we would appreciate that.
Okay, are these relatively short exhibits, Ms. Doty, or are they long?
They are relatively short. My only objection to that is that we actually were not given the documents ahead of time, and I would rather not have Mr. Lawrence coached on these documents in the break.
Okay.
Well, that's not entirely accurate. We did exactly what Mr. Lilly asked us to do, and we uploaded them at least a half hour prior to us returning to session, and we made the parties aware that they had been uploaded at least a half hour before. So,
but they were not posted so that we could get them, which is a significant difference.
All right. You two can both go back and forth on this for a long time, but we don't need to. The bottom line is Mr. Donlin is correct. I did say that I would make them available to the parties somewhat ahead of time so they'd have a chance to look at them. It turned out he didn't end up asking any questions about them, but I think it's reasonable for them to see them. We're just it's a few minutes and it'll make the hearing go more efficiently. So Ms. Doty, please upload them now. After you've uploaded them, please email them to the service list, and we'll get back at 3:10. If we need more time, we'll address that then. I mean, frankly, it may be that Mr. Lawrence says he needs more time to look at them anyway. So let's do that and see where we are at 3:10, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to turn off camera and microphone and be back at 3:10.
Great, thank you.
Okay. If anyone of the AHO is home, there we go. Please take down the break sign. If anybody hears my printer going, I'm printing at least some of the pages of the new exhibits here. So I'll have them. Okay, so we're done with the break. I'm going to start. I think I'll still be able to hear. My printer's just going to go for a minute. I just wanted to print at least the shorter of the exhibits. So I'm putting down 3:15, Ms. Doty, for your cross-examination to start. So nominally, you'll have till 4 o'clock. If you want to make, if you're not finished and want to make an offer of proof and continue, we'll talk about what we do today versus what we do tomorrow at 4. But please go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Lawrence. I'm Rachel Doty. I'm counsel for Story of Stuff.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to start with some easy questions, which are just about your background. All right. Well, about the background of your company. So the company that you work for, BlueTriton Brands, was it recently purchased by another organization?
I don't believe so. BlueTriton Brands was not purchased.
So you've represented to the Forest Service that the change from the name Nestle to the change BTB is nothing more than just a name change. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And was there any change in ownership?
The way I understand the process was a corporation that owned Nestle Waters North America sold this stock, or I can't recall the exact terminology, but there was a stock acquisition from another company. That company's name is Triton Water Holdings. And as part of that, there was a name change of Nestle Waters North America to BlueTriton Brands.
So did more than 50% of the stock in your company change hands?
Objection, relevance.
Who holds the water rights is relevant, and whether statements attributed to the past entity can be attributed to this one are relevant.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and allow it. I think this, I'm not sure I see a lot of relevance here, but I think it is important for us to know what the current legal entities are. So I'll overrule the objection. You may proceed.
So has more than 50% of the stock in the company that controls your entity changed hands in the last year?
I'll object again on one other grounds. Mr. Lawrence is not being offered as a corporate expert to speak on behalf of any parent corporations or anything of that nature.
And that objection is overruled. He may testify to the extent of his knowledge, and if he doesn't know, he may say so.
I do not know how much stock exchanged hands.
So is it BTB's position that any water right at issue in this matter or that were held by Nestle are now held by BTB?
Nestle
Misstates testimony on name of the entities.
I will pose the question again. So,
okay, the objection sustained. Please restate the question.
So any water rights pertinent to this matter that were formerly held by Nestle Waters North America, is it the position of BlueTriton Brands that BlueTriton Brands now holds those water rights, whatever they may be?
I believe that is the position.
And did the change in ownership in and of itself result in a change in legal position on this matter with regard on the water rights?
Objection, vague.
I'm going to overrule that objection. To the extent he knows, he may answer.
I don't have any information on that.
Have you been instructed to change your position in dealings with the water board with regard to water rights?
Objection, vague. I'm struggling with what she means by position.
Okay, Mr. Lawrence, are you the person you've testified? Sorry, you strike that. Mr. Lawrence, you have testified that you are VTV's natural resource manager. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And can you describe your responsibilities in that role?
I testified to that earlier. My responsibilities are to manage water sources in the Western United States for the bottling facilities in this region.
So are you the principal liaison between BlueTriton Brands and the United States Forest Service with regard to facilities of BlueTriton Brands located in the San Bernardino National Forest?
I am.
And do you think that you are well versed in what BlueTriton Brands' position is with regard to the operation on federal forest land regarding that permit and the permitted operation?
I'm sorry, which
Objection, I don't understand the question, vague.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I understand the question.
I am the primary liaison with the Forest Service in regards to the special use permit, if that's the permit you were referencing.
And do you feel that you thoroughly understand BlueTriton Brands' position with regard to that permit?
Objection, I still don't understand what you mean by position. It's vague.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think it's relatively clear. Position means any statements or other communications that Mr. Lawrence makes on behalf of BlueTriton Brands with the Forest Service. So, Mr. Lawrence, if you can answer the question, please do.
Could you repeat the question one more time, please?
Do you feel that you are well versed, that you thoroughly understand BlueTriton Brands' position with regard to the operation of BlueTriton Brands on San Bernardino National Forest and the Strawberry Creek watershed?
Yes, I do.
Would you say the same thing with regard to the position of BlueTriton Brands vis-a-vis the authority of the State Water Board over those same operations in Strawberry Canyon in the San Bernardino National Forest?
Yes.
And has that position shifted in any notable way since BlueTriton Brands became BlueTriton Brands? I'm sorry, I'll strike that. With the change in name from Nestle Waters North America to BlueTriton Brands?
Not that I'm aware of.
What about the operation in Strawberry Canyon and along the portions of the pipeline just below? Has there been any change in how that's operated as a result of the change in ownership from Nestle, or the change in name, sorry, from Nestle Waters North America to BlueTriton Brands?
Not that I'm aware of.
Has the source of the water changed as a result in the change in name?
I'm not sure what you mean by the source of the water.
The source of the water that is diverted in Strawberry Canyon, has that changed with the change in name from Nestle Waters North America to BlueTriton Brands?
No, it has not.
Has the source anywhere downstream that's part of that same diversion pipeline changed as a result of the change from Nestle Waters North America to BlueTriton Brands?
So I'm going to interpose an objection, Ms. Doty. I don't think we've heard testimony that there are any sources to BlueTriton's facilities downstream of what are boreholes 10, 11, and 12. So I don't understand what you mean by that question, if you mean downstream of boreholes 10, 11, and 12.
Do you source water that feeds into this pipeline, the one that's at issue in this case, the diversion pipeline, from anywhere other than 10 springs, 10 boreholes 10, 11, and 12 and upstream?
Objection. I'm struggling with the term upstream as vague.
I'll overrule that. I think that's pretty clear.
Oh, Mr. Lilly, maybe she could restate the question. We object. It is unclear. That's the purpose of this hearing.
Okay, so Mr. Donlin, first of all, one of the things I said in the pre-hearing conference is to avoid this from being a free-for-all. I really want to have one attorney per party per witness stating the objection. So, and Ms. Grady certainly has demonstrated she's very capable of representing this witness and objecting. So I ask that you funnel your instructions through her. And as far as, I think we can probably take care of this and move on. I'll just ask Mr. Lawrence this question. Does BlueTriton divert water anywhere downstream of boreholes 10, 11, and 12 in the Strawberry Creek watershed or any of the watersheds that Strawberry Creek flows into downstream from there?
We do not.
All right, so I think that takes care of it, Ms. Doty. I think you may move on.
Is it part of your job to have a general understanding of water law?
Not necessarily.
Would you say that you have a somewhat sophisticated understanding of water law, understanding that you're not an attorney?
I understand water law in such a way that I've interacted over the years with our lawyers and these types of events.
Would you say the same thing about your understanding of the management of special use permits for water diversions on Forest Service land?
I have a clear understanding of special use permit operations or management because I've managed a special use permit for some time now.
And do you know the difference between surface water? Sorry, strike that. To your mind, what is the difference between surface water and groundwater?
Objection. Seeks legal conclusion.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain the objection. Ms. Doty, I don't think his testimony is going to be relevant on that unless you can tie it to some filing or some filing with or other interaction with the State Water Board where he has taken a position or something in his testimony on those issues. If you want to cross-examine him on statements in his testimony about California water law, I think that's fine. But I don't think just asking him the question in general is appropriate here. So I'm going to sustain the objection with that basically guidance for how you may proceed.
So is it your, I believe it's your testimony, correct me if I'm wrong, that you are the person responsible at BlueTriton Brands for filing the groundwater recordation each year for the water diverted from Strawberry Canyon?
That is correct.
And how do you decide what to report?
We meter the water, as I described earlier, through the pipeline, and we report those diversions based on the metering of that of those sources.
Do you make any distinction between groundwater and source water or surface water in doing that?
We do. There is a box to check on surface water or groundwater, and that is generally checked as groundwater.
So is it your position that, strike that, is it BlueTriton Brands' position that 100% of the water you're diverting is groundwater?
I do not have any knowledge of, or don't have any opinion on that.
Are you the one who checks the box?
I do check the box.
And you check groundwater?
I do.
Have you been instructed to check groundwater by someone?
Objection. Attorney-client privilege.
Yeah, that, Ms. Doty, I have to sustain that one. That very clearly calls for him to waive the attorney-client privilege. So we can't do that. He stated he checks the groundwater box and does not check the surface water box. I'm not sure there's much more to pursue on this line of questioning.
Well, I'm not sure that we can assume that it's an attorney who tells him to check that. And it's a public statement. And if he is, I think we're entitled to understand how he concludes that it's groundwater.
Okay, well then you may ask whether anybody within BlueTriton who is not an attorney has advised him on which box to check. I think that would be appropriate. So you may proceed on that line of questioning if you want.
Do you seek the advice of anyone in BlueTriton before checking the box?
Wait, who is not an attorney, I said. I think you have to say that or else it's invading the attorney-client.
And I'm going to, I apologize, Mr. Lilly, I thought you were done. And I'm going to object on the grounds that to the extent we're seeking information passed around through a corporate entity that does have counsel, and as we all sit here today are well aware that we've got water counsel that advises BlueTriton brands, asking Mr. Lawrence, as he sits here today, to discuss from whom and with whom he gets advice regarding the nature of the water, which is the ultimate issue, a question at issue here, or one of the ultimate issues before you, Mr. Lilly, is dancing really on a pin around ACP.
Well, if I may respond to that.
Go ahead and respond.
So he may say then that he checks that box upon advice of counsel, or he may say, I checked that box after consulting with an engineer. Those are very different reasons for checking the box. One's a legal conclusion and one is based on actual physical characteristics of the watershed.
So, Ms. Doty, I'm going to just say, what is the relevance of whether someone within BlueTriton who is not an attorney told him to check the box? I mean, I'm not seeing a lot of relevance, and I'm very sensitive to the fact that this could be invading attorney-client communication. So please tell me why this is so relevant that we should take the risk of infringing on attorney-client privilege here.
So BlueTriton Brands represents to the state that they are diverting something that they say is 100% groundwater. Are we not entitled to know why they believe it's groundwater? How they make that determination?
Okay. The problem I'm having with this is this almost certainly is based on a legal analysis. And I know that because we have all the filings that BlueTriton's attorney, Ms. McGuire, has made with the State Water Board. So I'll ask this question this way, and then we can move on. And I guess also they made the filing. Mr. Lawrence clearly was authorized to make this filing on behalf of BlueTriton, so that's their position. So again, I don't see a whole lot of relevance whether they had an internal discussion that somehow did not involve their attorneys on that decision. But let me ask Mr. Lawrence this question, and then I think we'll need to move on. Mr. Lawrence, did you have discussions with anyone else within the BlueTriton organization or any of their consultants, not including attorneys, that on the issue of which box to check in these forms that did not involve discussions of your BlueTriton attorney's advice on this issue?
And I have to object. I apologize, but to the extent corporate information is passed along based on meetings with counsel, we're, like I said, I think we're really dancing on a pin, and I don't see the relevance of this. And to answer Ms. Doty's question, I think our arguments have been laid out, including in our motion to dismiss that we filed.
I'm not questioning Ms. Grady.
Okay. So I think the way I phrased the question avoids any issue of attorney-client privilege. So I'm going to overrule that objection and ask Mr. Lawrence to answer that question.
No.
All right. So Ms. Doty, you may proceed. That's that's as far as I'm going to allow on this line of questioning. I just am very sensitive about this invading attorney-client privilege, and I think the relevance is very limited. So I'm going to ask you to move on.
Okay, could we put up Amanda Fry exhibit number 62, please?
Is that 6-2?
That's correct.
Okay, so Mr. Wooldridge, if you can put up Fry 62, please.
And
Okay. And this is a map. I assume you'll want us to zoom in on parts of it. So please tell us where you want us to zoom in.
okay, if you could zoom in on the part that is, if you can see sort of in the middle there is Arrowhead Springs. And then if you can scroll so that Arrowhead Springs is kind of at the bottom center once you zoom in.
Okay, and I'll, at the risk of stating the obvious, Ms. Doty, I will state that you're going to have to establish a foundation that this witness knows anything about this exhibit, but you may proceed.
Okay.
And we're trying to zoom in. Is it as best we can? I think we need a couple more zooms, but we're trying to get the right part of the map. Okay. All right, maybe Mr. Wooldridge, you can scroll down just a little bit here. Unfortunately, we may have to get to go to the title page, but let's go ahead. We have that up there now. So Ms. Doty, you may proceed with your questions about this exhibit.
Okay, Mr. Lawrence, have you looked at topo maps before?
I have.
And do you understand what contour lines are?
I do.
Do you understand general conventions used in topo maps?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, let me give you an example then. For example, what do blue lines usually signify on topo maps?
Streams.
Okay, and so can you locate the streams that are on this map?
Objection. Foundation for the document.
That's been provided by Ms. Fry's.
All right. And I'm sorry, Mr. Wooldridge, but can you please scroll to the upper right corner? I think it would be good if we know what this document is. Okay, and so let's scroll out. Thank you. So this title page says Hydrologic Map of San Bernardino Redlands and Vicinity Showing Irrigated Lands by W.C. Mendenhall and J.B. Lippincott, 1905. And it has a scale and a contour interval of 50 feet. And the upper right says water supply paper, NO period 142, PL period XII. So that at least we know what that is. So now, Mr. Wooldridge, please scroll back to the area of Arrowhead Springs, and we'll see if that's good right there. So we'll see if Mr. Lawrence has sufficient knowledge to answer your questions about this.
Okay, so looking at the features on this map, and I'll give you a second to do that. What I'm going to be asking you is to tell me if this is consistent with your observations on the ground and in maps of the area.
I can't really see the upper section. If we could scroll in a little bit, right where the A is in Bernardino. Yep, that'd be good.
Okay, and let us know if you want to scroll back out. We have a trade-off here between detail and area. But go ahead,
Yes,
Ms.
And I'm going to object again. We still don't have a foundation for this document.
Well, we have the name of it, and I don't think there's really much question that this was in fact a document prepared in 1905 by the named individuals. So I think we have that much, but we still don't have any foundation beyond that. So Mr. We'll just scroll out one notch here and go ahead and Ms. Doty, ask your questions. I know this is a little tricky because this is not his exhibit and he hasn't testified to it, but I'm going to allow you to attempt to establish a foundation here.
Okay. So the area that's labeled Waterman Canyon on this map, is that what you understand Waterman Canyon to be?
All right, Mr. Wilders, scroll out one so we have Waterman Canyon there, okay?
Yeah, yes, that appears to be Waterman Canyon.
Okay, and then Arrowhead Peak is in fact located slightly to the east and above Waterman Canyon, is that
Yeah.
correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then Arrowhead Springs is located at the foot there of Arrowhead Peak near the confluence of East Twin and Strawberry Creek. Is that correct?
I'm not seeing that quite yet.
It's there now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my computer seems to be a little slow. I see East Twin. I don't see any reference to Arrowhead. I see Arrowhead Springs. Yes, I see it. Sorry. Right in front of me.
And is that where Arrowhead Springs is?
Wait,
I believe-
wait. Now, Ms. Doty, we've talked about Arrowhead Springs, the sources where BlueTriton diverts water, and we've talked about Arrowhead Springs where the old hotel was. So I think you have to be clear which one you're asking about here.
Well, I think that assumes facts not in evidence, Mr. Lilly.
Okay, well,
That's a statement that's been made by some people, but
okay, well, it's just that in prior questioning, Mr. Petroselli used the term Arrowhead Springs to refer to the springs. And clearly the depiction here of what's shown on the map as Arrowhead Springs is not where the springs on Upper Strawberry Creek are. So that's why there's an element of confusion here. And I think you need to ask your questions in a way that eliminates that confusion.
okay, Mr. Lawrence, can you help eliminate that confusion? Is Arrowhead Springs accurately labeled on this map?
And again, Ms. Doty, I still don't know what you mean by Arrowhead Springs. I mean, it says Arrowhead Springs here, but I don't know what that means, whether that's referring to springs that are sources of water or springs that was the site of a hotel.
And
This is a hydrographic map. So it has labeled, I don't see any buildings labeled.
and I would like to object because we still don't know what this map is, who made this map, where this map came from. I'm just struggling with the relevance here.
All
And
right.
the foundation.
Okay, I'm going to try to see if I can move us through this. Mr. Lawrence, there is a depiction shown on this map on the part that's on the screen now that says Arrowhead Springs. Do you know what that is a depiction of?
It appears to be in the area of the hotel location and the hot spring location, but I have no way of knowing.
All right, Ms. Doty, you may proceed.
Okay, and then looking upstream, it's a contour map, so what's portrayed is upstream on this map. East Twin Creek, does that appear to be accurately labeled on this map?
Can you zoom out a little bit, please?
And I object to ask what is accurately labeled as vague.
And yeah, and you know, Ms. Doty, I know you're trying to do the best you can here with an old map, but we've had prior testimony that this sometimes is called Coldwater's, I believe it's Coldwater Canyon, and sometimes East Twin Creek. So maybe you can ask specifically what your question is about this water course. And I'm just concerned that it's had different names. So we need to have your question be clear about that.
Mr. Lilly, I'm trying to establish what the names are for the features. And this is
Okay.
a map from 1905, so I'm asking if Mr. Lawrence's understanding of what those places are is consistent with what is on this map.
And I'll object. This is a map that says 1905 in the corner, but we have laid no foundation for this map.
And the foundation has been laid in Ms. Fry's testimony, and so it will come in that way. If it turns out the map has no foundation, then Mr. Lawrence's testimony on this point may be somewhat useless, but not entirely, because this goes to his understanding. He's testified that he has an understanding of the history of the area, of the water rights over time, going back into the 1800s. So one would expect him to have some sort of understanding of what the names of the features are.
Okay, and again, I know now from what I heard in testimony from other witnesses on Monday and Tuesday, that what is shown as East Twin Creek here north of that Arrowhead Springs depiction is sometimes called Coldwater Canyon. So you may ask him questions about, does he understand the depiction of this creek? But if you're asking questions about the name of this creek, we already know that there's some confusion about that. So I don't want you to ask him a question that's misleading about the name and basically could perpetuate that confusion. So with that admonition, excuse me, Ms. Gray, we don't have a question right now, but so I'm not sure an objection is appropriate, but.
Well, I apologize for speaking over you. I did not mean to do that. I was objecting on the grounds that it sounds like Ms. Doty is heading into a line of questioning, seeking Mr. Lawrence's testimony, either as a recipient witness, and I'm not going to speak for him, but I don't think he was around in 1905, or as a historical expert, and that's not what he's been offered for.
Okay, well, let's let Ms. Doty ask her question, and then if you think there's an appropriate objection, you may make it. So, Ms. Doty, I did give some guidance here, which I hope you will heed, but go ahead and ask your next question.
Mr. Lawrence, in your testimony, is it true that you've said what you know about historical records of pipelines and that they were constructed in Strawberry, Coldwater, Waterman Canyons as early as 1909 and likely earlier?
Can you restate that question one more time, please?
I didn't exactly hear a question there. Please restate that.
May I just read what his testimony is here to refresh his recollection, or we can put it on the screen. It's BTV 10 at page 5, paragraph 18.
Yes, I think that would be good. So Mr. Roldridge, please try to keep this map. Oh, I think it zoomed out, but going to page 5, paragraph 10, is that what you said?
Yes. No. Page 5, paragraph 18.
All right, there we go. We now
Okay.
have it in front. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Lawrence, you have testified here that we know from historical records that pipelines were constructed in Strawberry, Coldwater, and Waterman Canyons as early as 1909. Do you have some understanding of where Strawberry, Coldwater, and Waterman Canyons are?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Can we flip back to Fry Exhibit 62, please? You've already testified that Waterman Canyon on this map is in the location where you understand it to be. What about Coldwater Canyon? Where do you understand that to be?
Well, on the map, it's labeled as East Twin Creek. And it appears to be in the location I would expect it to be in.
Okay, and then what about Strawberry Creek?
Strawberry Creek appears to be in the location I would expect it to be in.
Okay. And then looking at Arrowhead Springs, you said those are the hot springs. Is that accurate? Is that what you said?
Objection.
Wait, what's the objection?
Misstates testimony.
Okay, I don't know whether it does or not, but why don't you go ahead and answer the question, Mr. Lawrence? That's probably the best way to proceed here.
I would say it's in the area of the hotel. I believe what I said is it was in the area of the hotel and possibly the hot springs in that area as well.
And those hot springs in that area, is it your understanding that those are palatable drinking water?
It's my understanding that some of that water was bottled at one time or another.
Is it your understanding that it is what would be considered palatable drinking water today?
I don't have an opinion on that.
Do you know if those springs that are labeled Arrowhead Springs on this map that we're talking about were ever referred to as mineral water,
I do not know.
as curative water? I'm sorry.
I can't see the springs very well on the map, so.
Are you familiar with the springs that are with this location that has Arrowhead Springs label and on the actual ground?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
The area that is on this map labeled as Arrowhead Springs, do you know where that is on the ground? Not on the map, in real life.
No, I don't.
So you don't know where the hot springs are that were discussed in the newspaper articles that you submitted as attachments to your testimony?
I do, but they are not, I believe the ones that were in my testimony are not at this location.
Where do you believe them to be?
Some were in Waterman Canyon
Okay,
and some were near this location.
okay. And could we put prosecution team exhibit 12, page 5 up, please?
Okay, PT 12, page 5. All right, we have PT 12, page 5 on the screen. Go ahead with your questions.
Mr. Lawrence, do you see where, sorry, can you zoom in a little bit on the outlined watershed there? Okay. Do you see where on this map it says Indian Springs?
Do.
Are you familiar with, sorry, scratch that. Do you agree that Indian Springs is located in approximately the area of that green dot?
Approximately.
Okay, so it's located on that stream, that blue line stream that's indicated there.
I'd say it's approximately located near that dot.
Okay. And then could we please put up Story of Stuff exhibit 49?
Okay, we will do that. I don't think we've posted that one before, so bear with us while we get it.
Okay. Mr. Lawrence, have you seen this document before?
Can we zoom in a little bit on it? I'm not sure if I've reviewed this document before.
Could you take a few seconds or however much time you need and take a look at it and see if you believe it to be accurate? And by accurate, what I mean is, does the stream shape look like Strawberry Creek and Cold Creek? And does the pipeline appear to be in roughly the place you understand the present day diversion structure in Strawberry Canyon to be?
Could we please zoom in a little bit? Just at the top, please. I recognize some of the features I would say that loosely represented spring 1, 2, and 3. I don't recognize many of the other features, and I would just say that the pipeline alignment is generally follows that path.
I'm sorry, did you say generally does or does not follow that path?
Does follow that path. I am not looking at the only, as for right now, in section 30 and 31. I can't see the rest of it.
Oh. I'm sorry, could you scroll back up? So with regard to 30 and 31, it appears, you're saying that part appears roughly to be what exists today on the ground?
I'm
I
not
have to
saying
object
that.
again on, I apologize for speaking over, I didn't mean to. Object on foundation.
I'm going to overrule that. I think Ms. Doty is just asking him about his understanding of whether this depiction is consistent with what's in the ground. So I think that's appropriate. Go ahead, Mr. Lawrence. I think, Ms. Doty, did he already answer, or do you have a question that he has not answered yet?
I believe he was inadvertently interrupted. He was starting to answer.
Okay, well, let's not criticize. It's hard for attorneys to make objections when we're all working.
That's why I said inadvertently.
Fair enough. So why don't you go ahead and just ask him the question again, so he can focus on the question.
Okay. So Mr. Lawrence, wait, we can scroll down slowly here. I just want you to take a look at it and tell me if this accurately depicts roughly what's on the ground now. It's a drawing, so.
So I'm just going to say that the pipeline, I believe, is in the same sections. I have no idea from ground contour if it's following a similar path, but it ultimately travels through the same sections and similar terminus.
Okay. And then the features located here, Cold Creek, Strawberry Creek, those appear to be accurate in relation to each other on this map.
Without any background at all, it's hard to tell how accurate they are, but they're east and west of each other appropriately.
Fair enough. Okay, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit now that we've gotten a bit of the lay of the land. BlueTriton brand's operation requires a permit called a special use permit from the Forest Service to occupy federal land. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what does that permit entitle BlueTriton brands to do?
That permit allows us to operate and maintain our spring catchment facilities and pipeline facilities.
And were you part of the process to obtain that permit for Nestle Waters North America?
In the 2018 permit, yes.
And can you describe what your role was in that process?
My role was to manage the team of scientists and lawyers and other professionals to go through the NEPA process and work with the Forest Service to define the terms of the permit.
And so did you review and have responsibility for the correspondence between the Forest Service and Nestle Waters North America?
Some of it.
Well, fair enough. And to your knowledge, was all of the information that BlueTriton brands provided to the Forest Service as part of that process complete and accurate?
To my knowledge, yes.
And if we could put up Story of Stuff Exhibit 84, please.
All right.
And as this is coming up, Mr. Lawrence, I'm going to ask you if you're familiar with this image, this map,
I have seen this image.
and where did you see it?
Well, I saw it yesterday in testimony, I believe.
Did you see
And
it?
then,
I apologize.
and then I believe I seen this as part of Forest Service exhibits at one point or another.
Okay. And are all of the points of diversion for BlueTriton brands for this Strawberry Canyon diversion that's at issue in this case located within what is highlighted in yellow on this map?
I cannot tell from the scale of the map from where I'm looking at it. Zoom in, please. The diversions are not labeled on this map. So I can't really tell. I assume I can't make an assumption about this.
So looking at the geographic features that are labeled on this map, for example, the blue line streams, can you point to where the BlueTriton brands diversions are located?
Not specifically. I have no way of, first of all, I have no way of pointing. And then secondly, it's very, the scale is very large on this map.
Okay, so the Forest Service has highlighted in yellow general permit area. You reviewed.
We've got no foundation for who's marked anything in yellow in this area. And further, I'm going to object on asked and answered. I think we've already gone through this document today.
I have not.
Retreading ground.
Okay. The objection is overruled. First of all, Mr. Lawrence did testify he recognized this as an exhibit from the Forest Service document. So I think we do know where it came from. And then as far as the questioning, I can't remember who asked whom questions about this exhibit yesterday, but I know it was not Ms. Doty asking Mr. Lawrence. So I'm going to allow her to proceed with her questioning. I will say, Ms. Doty, that I think Mr. Lawrence has a good point that the points of diversion are not shown on this map. So you can proceed, but there may be a limitation to how much he's going to be able to answer your questions. But please proceed.
Okay, can you scroll down, please, to the legend there? What is demarcated as being indicated by yellow highlighter on this map?
General permit area.
What's the date of this map as indicated?
April 14, 2016.
Okay, and I apologize, I honestly don't remember. Did you testify that you recall this from the Forest Service permitting process?
I believe I've seen it.
Okay, so scrolling up again, do you think the yellow highlighter does in fact accurately indicate where the permitted facilities are on the Forest Service land?
As I said, I have no way of seeing where the facilities are relative to the yellow highlighted area. It's very generalized. I believe this map was to identify the helispots and the permitted area.
Okay, can we scroll back down for just one moment?
Excuse me.
The title of this map is Special Use Permit, and the yellow is General Permit Area. Helispots, it says, are denoted by orange circles. Do you agree with that interpretation of the legend?
I do.
Okay. And you're the person who actually signed the SUP and initialed each page of it on behalf of Nestle Waters North America. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So do you have an understanding of what geographic area the permit covers?
I do.
Okay. And since this was the Forest Service's material, the Forest Service's position is presumably portrayed on its own map. Do you agree with their interpretation of where the general permitted area is?
And Ms. Doty, I'm going to basically ask you to restate that question, because what we don't know is whether this was an exhibit from an environmental document or from the permit itself. So I think Mr. Lawrence has correctly said that there's some uncertainty as to the level of detail that's appropriate here. And Ms. Grady previously raised an objection on foundation, and I know you're trying to establish a foundation, but I don't think you've established a foundation that this is a permit document, and it could very well just be a more general environmental document. I don't know, but that's my concern. I think you're assuming it's a permit document when we don't know that for sure.
Okay, I will circle back to this after a further line of questioning then.
Okay,
I'm withdrawing the question. Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
okay. I was going to say, this is probably a good time to wrap it up for today. Can you give me a time estimate and a topic discussion of what you plan to cover? It has been 45 minutes, so this is a good point to stop. How much more time do you think, and what topics do you want to cover with this witness?
So honestly, there have been quite a few objections and discussions. So I think I may have another 40 minutes if it continues to go this slowly. We will continue to talk about statements that BlueTriton Brands and its predecessors have made regarding understanding of the nature and character of the water and the water rights in the area. We'll talk about statements that Mr. Lawrence has made. We'll talk about some materials that BlueTriton Brands has presented to the public and other agencies regarding the nature of the water and the water rights. We may talk about the physical chemistry of the water.
Okay, and I have allowed other attorneys leeway in going past the 45 minutes, and I do agree with you. Some of the extra time was because of objections, and some of it was because of my comments. So I will allow you another 40 minutes tomorrow. We will start tomorrow at 9. And before we wrap up, I see two hands. Ms. Nickel, we haven't heard from you much today. What is your question?
Thanks, Mr. Lilly. Just a housekeeping scheduling issue. I was anticipating having my opportunity to cross today. And so I actually have 2 commitments for other clients tomorrow that make my availability tomorrow difficult. I'm available to go first thing tomorrow. I don't want to break up Ms. Dowdy's cross-examination, but the commitments that I have for other clients are at 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Each should last for about an hour. I apologize for the inconvenience. I was doing my best to keep my schedule clear enough to accommodate this process, but I'm hoping that we can accommodate.
All right. I wish I'd known. I would have had you go before Ms. Doty, but that's fine. So Ms. Doty, do you have an objection if Ms. Nickel does her cross-ex tomorrow morning at 9 and then we shift back to you?
That's fine with me.
All right.
Thank you. I
So we
appreciate
will
the information.
do that. And just so you all know, I have, and I'm sorry, I did my best to clear the calendar, but I do have another matter I have to cover between 10 and 10:30. So we're going to have to take a break then, but I'm sure if Ms. Nickel, you're estimating 15 minutes, we should be able to finish yours and at least get back started with Ms. Doty, and then we'll go. But we are going to have to take a little longer morning break. That's my only schedule conflict tomorrow, but I do have that one with a prior meeting. And Mr. Bilecki, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Lilly. I might note relative to the last illustration, the last map we were looking at that was dated April 14th, 2016 by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, that's the same date that there was a special use permit scoping meeting. There was a public meeting in which there was a large number of Forest Service personnel.
Okay, Mr. Bilecki, stop. This is testimony. You will have a chance to testify. If you want to talk about this, you may. If it's beyond the scope of your direct, it potentially may be rebuttal. But the way to handle this is after you've taken the oath for you to testify. And I know you're learning how this process goes, so I apologize for cutting you off, but you will have a chance to talk about this if you want to, subject, of course, to potential objections from other attorneys or from attorneys, but not today. So please be patient. We will get to you. And if we don't finish on tomorrow and Friday, we will keep going. I am not going to cut people off as long as people have important matters that they want to talk about. This is a very important hearing for all parties, and I certainly respect that and want to give everyone an opportunity to be heard and to have fair process. So, and again, I apologize for my schedule conflicts, but there were a few things that came up. Frankly, I didn't realize we were going to take all day today. That wasn't as expected, but that's okay. So, and we now have basically Mr. Donlin has advised us they're no longer asking us to take tomorrow off, and it looks pretty clear we're going to want tomorrow and Friday to try to wrap this up. So, Mr. Donlin, what is your parting comment before we sign off today? Your hand is up.
Well, we had assumed that we would be taking tomorrow or today off, I believe, when we asked for a continuance. We still have this record here that we have not been able to review from Ms. Fry and from SOS. Today has been absorbed mostly with this hearing. So if you are thinking about continuing the hearing into next week, we would renew our request to take the testimony from Ms. Fry and SOS next week.
Okay, and I did not say next week. I said we'll continue it. And actually, my calendar with other matters other matters I'm working on is pretty darn full for next week. So it would probably be after that. So let's do this. Tomorrow morning, hopefully morning, but afternoon as necessary, we will complete the cross-examination and any redirect of Mr. Lawrence. We will process BlueTriton brand's offer of it, if it offers its exhibits into evidence, and we'll get through that. I then plan to proceed with the other witnesses who have relatively short presentations, and that would be Mr. Bilecki, Mr. Lowe, and Mr. Serrano, if he's here. I believe he's been on my phone. And then we will see where we are with story of stuff, and Ms. Fry, who, you're right, Mr. Donlin, have very lengthy sets of exhibits. So let's see where we are. I'm not making any promises. We will proceed with them after the other three parties, with at least their direct, and I will see what makes sense and give you an update at the end of the day tomorrow on how far we're going to go on Friday with them versus continuing to a subsequent date. So I would at least try to get as familiar with them as you can. I will note, when I read over their testimony, most of their testimony appeared to be authenticating documents. So I'm not sure that there's a lot of testimony beyond that, but you do have a right to cross-examine, and I will certainly be willing to hear your comments about appropriate scheduling for that when we talk tomorrow. So I hope that at least gives you some guidance. I'm not giving you a clear yes or no answer, largely because I don't know how long our hearing process is going to take tomorrow with Mr. Lawrence and the other parties before we get to those, the last two, Ms. Fry and storage stuff. So any other questions for today? All right. Well, thank you all very much. I will see everybody tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and we will go from there. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.